Hello and welcome to In the Weeds. We're recording live from the Picky Weeds Esoteric Occult Boutique, located just south of Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, in beautiful South Abington Township. Picky Weeds is the largest and most diverse boutique of its kind in Northeast Pennsylvania, with an increasingly wide variety of items for many traditions.
In addition to items for sale, Picky Weeds hosts a wide variety of classes, events, and community-driven gatherings throughout the year. Picky Weeds is located at 105 Layton Road, South Abington Township, PA. Open Wednesday through Sunday, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. More information can be found at www.pickyweeds.com. That's PICKEYWEEDZ.com, or on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. In the Weeds is the official podcast for Picky Weeds, where we strive to bring the community together with topics of interest, guest speakers, and informative discussions to benefit the entire community.
If you'd like to be a guest speaker, either live or remote call-in, please visit www.pickyweeds.com. Scroll down to the bottom of the page, find In the Weeds podcast guest application, click it, copy and paste the text into an email with your contact information, and send it to us at pickyweeds@gmail.com.
Now let's get in the weeds.
Hey everybody, we're here today on our second episode. We got John and Tay, the owners of Picky Weeds, and we're the hosts for In the Weeds podcast. And today we're going to kick it off with our second episode so far.
Woohoo!
So we got some upgrades and some little better equipment so our mic stands aren't falling over, and good times.
Yeah, and I'm not kissing it every time it... Hello.
So what are we going to talk about today?
So we're going to talk about a question we get all the time, that people come into the store just completely confused, and they're like, how do I get started? What do I do first? Where do I go? Who do I look to? So we're going to get down to the questions that we get the most here today and how to get started, because it is kind of overwhelming. Sort of like back in the day for me. It's not that way anymore, and you guys are, I don't think you realize how very lucky we are these days to have all the resources we do have. But then again, there comes that point of trying to pick through the crap. So we're going to try to weed the wheat from the chaff for you today, and show you where to start.
Yeah, and it is really overwhelming too. Is a lot of folks, they're interested, but paganism, magic, everything is just such a vast category, and then you don't know where to jump on the moving treadmill.
Yeah, it's insane.
So, really the best advice is to just jump in and break stuff. Really there isn't, we don't have a holy book that starts at page 1, right? It's a little bit more in depth.
Yeah. And I'd say one of the first questions I like to ask when a client comes in and goes, where do I start? What are you attracted to?
Yeah.
Is it magic you're attracted to? Is it like in the ceremonial? Do you want high magic where there's a lot of ceremony and a lot of ritual and a lot of planning and a lot of prep? Is it folk magic where you're interested in doing, sympathetic magic? Is it green magic? Are you more of a nature witch? Do you enjoy being out in nature, picking weeds, making potions, making pots, things like that? And that's how we go. Is it voodoo? Is it hoodoo? What is your interest? What draws you? What attracts you?
And where do you come from? What's your ancestry? Where do your people come from?
Absolutely.
We're all immigrants of some kind, unless you're indigenous to the U.S. Your parents came here. Your grandparents, your great grandparents, however far back it goes. Genealogy is a rabbit hole in and of itself, but it kind of gives you, some explanation as to why maybe you might be attracted to a certain deity or a certain cultural practice, and you want to learn more about it. It's a good starting point too.
It is. It really is. And we both did our genealogy, and then we did the family tree kind of thing. And it gave us a lot of insight. But the strangest thing was shipping off the DNA to Genome Link. I had always had these dreams, and this is something I want you guys to pay really close attention to, because these were recurring dreams for me about weaving papyrus, about looking inside clay amphors on steps, about standing in the savannas in Africa. And I thought, they're just dreams. Maybe it's just my hopes, places I want to go, things I want to see. But then I sent my DNA off to Genome Link, and it came back that my DNA actually held from South Africa and the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia. Wow. So it was really kind of striking and shocking because I'd always dreamt about it. So pay attention to these things and look at that DNA. And when you see a place that you've never been and your heart aches a little bit and you don't understand why and you feel like a crazy person, it's probably your DNA hailing you back, going, hey, do you miss me? So look into that and go with that and look at the histories and read about the gods and the goddesses, read about the people, read about their practices, and see what sings to you, what speaks to you.
Yeah, working with ancestors is a huge deal. That's something that, is a pretty guiding force for a lot of people. And look, this isn't a hard, fast rule either. Maybe you're Irish and you're really attracted to Greek mythology. There's nothing wrong with that. Practice what feels good to you. The one thing you have to be careful of, and the one thing that, especially with like Irish mythology, I think we touched on that briefly in the first episode, is that you don't want to do cultural appropriation. You don't want to, misrepresent the cultures, so and a lot of us have Irish or Welsh or Scottish backgrounds, or English or Britain. You want to look a little deeper into it and try to find some academic sources, and they're out there, and there's more coming out, way more now than we had, available to us, say 20, 30 years ago.
It's insane how much is available now. It's really, really, it makes me hopeful to see all of the academics who are coming out who are correcting the Romanicist nonsense of the Victorian age in the late 1800s, early 1900s, because there was a lot of positing going about. And I'll give you a brief synopsis. So there's this whole thing dedicated to the Celtic tree alphabet. It is absolutely ridiculous. And we fell for it. It's going to happen. We were young and we were, it was beautiful and it was very, very romantic and it sounded good, and these are the pitfalls of being a modern day pagan. But this whole Celtic tree alphabet, the whole, birch means this, beech means
talking
that.
Talking about the Om, right?
Oak, ash, and yew, and then the Om, assigning that to the Om, and the Om is its own. It's basically a place marker. So that whole entire Om alphabet was basically used to mark places and graves, as far as we know, but was never related to this Celtic tree alphabet, which arose from a poem by Robert Graves in The White Goddess called, what is it? The Battle of the Trees. And so somebody saw that and went, oh, that's beautiful. That's perfect. Let's take it and run with it. And suddenly we had Om associated with the Celtic tree alphabet being touted as a magical practice of the Druids. And it's something that never was. So you got to be careful. You really have to use your skepticism. I know that you want to be spiritual and you want to be in love with everything you're doing and you want it to feel romantic, but that leads to this pure place of utter desperation and depression when you let that go too far. And when you're academic with it and you're not fooling yourself, a healthy dose of skepticism is going to lead to deeper spiritual practices and end results. So don't get caught up in the romantic nonsense.
Yeah, it's really disheartening, and especially like the people that have studied and basically didn't know any better, right? So they went, oh, okay, Celtic tree oracle, okay, so birch means baith, and that means this, and they come up with a whole divination system, and then to find out 15, 20 years later that everything you've been doing is based on, quite frankly, bullshit. So that's really difficult to take, especially when you were sincere in your practice and you were giving it everything you can, and it's hard. That's a hard lesson, and I think that also leads to trepidation for new people. They're like hearing about, these kind of things and going, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to step wrong. And then they end up never taking a step, or they just contend with, I like crystals because they're shiny and pretty and they make me feel good. And that's cool too. But, you can go so much deeper into this and have a personal path that continues to twist and turn and broaden as you learn more and more. The thing with Irish and Celtic, or not Celtic, I hate that word, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, they're all individual cultures, and they're all individual indigenous people to those lands before they were colonized by England and the Anglos and Rome and Greeks and everybody else, right? So, and a lot of the traditions there were oral, so they didn't pass down things in books. It's not like where you have some of the other mythologies, like what was it, India? The Sanskrit. And there's you can read things that are thousands of years old that have been put in practice, and you can study it. And it's still a lot of hard work and dedication, no doubt, but you have a written guide.
It's a long tradition of scribes there.
Whereas with Ireland, your best bet is to find a group of scholars that are also pagan. That's why we keep referencing Irish Pagan School. Those Laura and John are amazing.
Great.
Highly recommend. And I get their frustration, So you have corporate America that descended upon paganism, and now it's gotten really, really popular in corporate. You go to Dollar General and find what they call witchy stuff, and
yes, Target,
and they're just cashing in. So anyway, I guess long story short is, don't be afraid to step on the path, but when you do, try to take the right steps. So probably the first thing you should recognize is maybe the different categories, right? There's different practices based on ancestral, where your people hail from. There's different practices based on the type of practice, the approach to it. And then there's some that kind of incorporate everything. This is a very individual thing, right? You don't have to do your craft the way your friend does, or the way your relative does, or the way this other person you met on the internet does. The really only wrong thing to do is to take from another culture
and claim
it as something that it's not. If you're going to practice that culture. And there are more resources now than there ever have been that I can recall. So the onus is on you to try to get authentic and put the work in. What do you think about that, Dave?
I think people misunderstand why we get so upset about cultural appropriation, and they don't see that when you're using somebody else's practices and claiming them as your own, you're destroying history. And there are 596 dead languages, and we're talking extinct dead languages that are no longer spoken, they're no longer studied. And with those, due to colonization, died so many beautiful spiritual traditions. And when we appropriate and we claim that something is ours, or our covens, or, that this practice was always practiced by these people, when in truth it was not ever practiced by these people, such as this alphabet we just spoke of, you're doing damage. You're doing damage to those seekers who are coming behind you, that are looking for an authentic lead in to what is in their DNA, what is in their genetics, and what might speak most deeply to them in their spiritual practice. But like John said, if you're practicing, this is a very personal spiritual experience, and it should be a personal spiritual experience. You do not want a boxed version of spirituality. This is not religion, folks. Religion is the boxed version with all the rules and regulations.
Dogma.
And the dogma. And this is supposed to be your personal gnosis, your personal spiritual path. It's supposed to mean something deeply and spiritually to you. And just because other people don't understand it, why do you care? Why do you care whether they understand it? Why do you care whether they believe it or not? It's your practice. But when you're doing it, don't step on the other practice's toes. Love is the law.
Yeah, it's a fine thing. It's a fine line, so to speak, just between, individualism and then just getting the history completely wrong. And, not to throw off them, but there are organizations that are calling themselves Druids or Dree. I only know of a couple, and that would be the Irish pagan school folks, who could probably come close to what we know of that tradition. You see a lot of old white men at Stonehenge every year
wearing aprons.
With the aprons, and they, I don't know what they're copying things from Pliny or whatever adversarial author wrote about the Druids and claiming that as truth. And it's just,
history was written by the victors.
it's just not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not the real thing.
So, I mean, they spoke multiple languages. They were the priest caste. It went so much deeper than gathering at a sacred place once a year and putting your apron on.
It did, because they kind of encompassed the whole of culture in the world there. They were the doctors, they were the lawyers, they were the priests, they were the musicians, they were the poets, they were the scribes. And so Druid is not just one thing. It encompasses many things. And then you have your arch druid, your head dude. He actually had the ear of the leader, the chieftain. People say kings now, but it would have probably more likely been a chieftain. And they were their advisor. So they were sort of like our psychologists and our advisors, the period of time. And there are so many different aspects of what they were. And it's the same for so many cultures. Like, you'll hear a lot about indigenous cultures. And you'll talk about healers, and you'll talk about heyokas, and you'll talk about, shaman, medicine men, medicine women, that kind of thing. These people that were kind of on the outliers of society that people went to in their roughest moments, at their darkest hour. That's what these are. They're extremely spiritual people who practiced and who kept themselves, in right mind and right spirit for the good of their tribe. And that's kind of the way you want to look at it. So if you're practicing incorrectly and you're passing that down and you're making up things as you go along to finish the book you're writing, you're doing damage.
Yeah. And it's, look, neo-paganism is done some positive things, and I don't want to go off on all of it, because a lot of people find a lot of joy. Okay. But the bad thing about neo-paganism is it turns into kind of a big game of Chinese whisper. So
it does.
Somebody has an idea that their ancestry was Fae, and so they're fairy and fairy. Okay.
All right.
Look, no.
Sure thing. Yeah.
No. And it becomes into this fantastical, whimsical delusion, and it's doing damage to practice. It's doing damage to yourself to not take it seriously enough to actually dig a little deeper, and
when the purpose is to raise yourself up, to ascend, to become a higher level thinker, and a more empathetic, compassionate member of society.
And that doesn't mean we have to read all the dry, archaeological text, though I find it fun. But
I do too.
Not everybody does. Some people want, something a little lighter introduction, and those are out there now too. Pagan authors now are cranking out some just really, really good works that, man, I wish we'd have had those, 20, 30 years ago.
Yes.
It would have made things
so much easier.
Oh, God. And at the same time, the bullshit factory is also cranking out at a record pace a lot of nonsense. So we talked about the Farrar and her six foot pole. You want to, it's in the Witch's Bible, complete referencing, you need to keep some of this stuff away. It's like, you need to look at it, keep it at a distance, read about it before you accept it as truth. Skepticism is a good thing.
Yes, it is.
And keeping yourself grounded, both physically, mentally, and spiritually, is something that you should be doing all the time, because something will sound great. Oh, wow. You got fairies in your blood. Fairy blood. Wow. And you're envisioning wings sprouting out of someone's back. One thing that's not what our interpretation of fae is anyway.
No.
And they're not exactly, you want to keep
Happy,
them
shiny.
keep them
No.
happy and appeased, and not so much.
Don't draw their attention.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's legends and there's things about, mixing with humans. And okay, so you have to be able to have good common sense too.
Discernment.
It's spiritual, but you also at the same time have to have as much rooted. You have to have a good foundation. And that's why we're constantly pushing for folks to lean towards the academic first. Get the baseline down, and there's a lot of books and a lot of other podcasts or people to listen to. They've got a lot to offer. Just keep that skepticism, because the woo is strong.
Yes, it is. And it's detrimental. It's just like that. I talk about toxic positivity. When you run into that practitioner who's a complete and utter love and lighter, and any looking at the self and gazing in the glass darkly is like, woo, don't do that. It's awful. That's evil. That's vile. I'm sorry. Magic is magic is magic. And if you don't practice in balance, you're not in balance. And that toxic positivity, it comes from a lot of, I'm going to say, very, very famous national authors and podcasters and YouTubers who preach that manifestation doctrine of you draw it. You draw what you think. You know what? That leads to a lot of people being very, very depressed and wanting to kill themselves. And it's just, honestly, it's the most disreputable thing I've ever heard, because there's not a soul in this universe that can be positive every minute. And you know what? That's fine. It's fine if you can't be positive every minute. You're not supposed to be. That's not life. That's not what this is. Introspection and a little look at shadow is always necessary, so that you're not further triggered on down the line. So when we talk about, doing the work and doing the dark work of shadow, what you're doing when you do that is setting yourself up for good mental health, in practice, because you're learning who you are and what your triggers are and where your darkness comes from and where your anger comes from. And you're learning to control yourself and control your thought processes and control your will. So anybody preaching that positivity doctrine, run. It's bad for your mental health and it's bad for your practice.
And the same can be said for the other side, the edgelord.
Yes, oh my God.
You're
the super guy.
God. Oh, yeah, I only do black magic. I'm just so dark and
lovely.
Yeah.
And delicious.
Good God, dude. You watch way too much Harry Potter. I mean, it's just an imbalance, right?
Yeah.
And nature is nature. And, you have sunshine and warm, gentle summer breezes, and then you have floods,
tornadoes,
and hurricanes, and,
avalanches.
all manner of things, right? So this is the same thing. This is a path that tries to walk in step with the natural progress of everything. So, even our, holidays, whatever tradition you pass, the chances are it goes along an agricultural cycle. How woo is that? You go along with the planting and sowing and harvesting of the seeds and plants and crops, and then you have your period of rest and you start over. That's the holidays.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of woo there, but we try to put it in so it sounds mystical and magical, and
it already is mystical and magical.
Yeah, you don't need to add to it.
Yeah.
If you've ever attended a ritual, whether it's public, private, yourself, just a friend, or a full coven celebrating one of the holidays, there's nothing like it.
No. There's solemnity, there's pageantry, there's ritual, and then there's joyfulness and drunkenness and partying and celebrating, and it's what our ancestors would have done. Like one coming up now soon is Samhain. And it literally means summer's end, and it was a huge harvest festival. It's also the veil is the thinnest And so the spirits are joining us from the other side, and we're celebrating them, and we're trying to feed them and welcome them in and not be afraid of them. And we're also celebrating our community. Somebody would take coal around to each house, to keep people warm for the winter, and pass the torch and all of these things. It was kind of an amazing harvest festival. And you see that replicated a lot in public life, and they don't even realize they're doing it. It always kind of tickles me a little bit when these townships who are very, very, ultra fundamentalist religious are having harvest festivals. I have to giggle just a little. It's like when they're celebrating Easter and they're in all their finery and they're running around with a rabbit and chasing eggs.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Having the fertility ritual. And I'm like, I just have to laugh. I think it's fantastic. But thank you for that, guys. You just don't know what you're doing, but we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pick that egg, Becky.
It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely.
Oh, yeah. So going back to the beginning, just don't worry so much about, if you're new to the path, about doing something wrong. We get people in the store. I was told I couldn't buy my first tarot deck. Someone has to buy it for me.
Goodness.
That is the biggest bunch of bullshit.
That's a tradition of somebody's coven or religious practice. It's not common.
By all means, if that's your dogma and whatever you're in, then yeah, absolutely. That's the way you should practice it. But that doesn't mean everybody practices that way.
No, not at all. Not at all. And
so find the tarot deck that you like. Find the one that appeals to you. The one that, is it a good idea to start with a base Rider Waite? Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Is it a good idea to start with an obscure tarot deck that doesn't have the appropriate imagery? Or it depends on you. But the thing you got to be careful of is not listening to a lot of these, what we call old wives' tales. It is absolutely, unless you are part of that tradition where that's your tradition, someone else has to buy it for you.
Which is respectable. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine, but it doesn't apply to everyone. It's the same as the Wiccan read, right? Yeah. That's for a Wiccan, absolutely. That's part of your religion. That's part of your path.
And you should live it and not cherry pick it.
But that doesn't mean that all practitioners follow that. That's just for you. And then that's great, but don't push it on everyone else. Yeah. Otherwise, we become like a couple other religions.
Some of the Abrahamics. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not there. We're not in that class.
And they're not all like that either. So I want you guys to kind of realize that we have a lot of Christian customers.
Oh, God,
too.
yeah.
They're very loving and very welcoming and very accepting of who we are and what we do. And they don't denigrate us or try to convert us. And we're not here to convert people. It's like that I just went to my first Sunday meeting, and I'm super ultra religious man. Woo, woo, woo.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got to go around and convert all their friends and spread the gospel and all that stuff. And it's just, God, that's so annoying.
Oh, God, yeah.
Don't be that person either. It's great if you're on a new health kick or whatever and you love your friends, but do you know that when you have preached to them and preached to them and preached to them about how they should not eat this or they should eat that every time they see you coming, they kind of try to hide and roll their eyes. Please don't be that person.
Yeah, you're that person.
Don't be that person. Mm-mm. And I'm sure I was that person. Because I was a very angry pagan at around 20-ish or so. And I was so sick and tired of having, I was in the evangelical South. So I was tired of having Christianity shoved down my throat at every available opportunity. And you have every Tom, Dick, and Harry preacher knocking on your door, and then the Mormons, and then the Jehovah's Witnesses. And every single time that you're sitting on the couch, taking a break from working all week long and trying to watch a movie, somebody's knocking on your door with their pamphlets, and I was just sick of it. So I was pretty angry. But yeah, it's not necessary. They're not all like that. You can reserve your righteous anger for the ones that come at you like that.
Yeah, it's like validation through conversion.
Yeah.
So if I can convert you to accepting what I think is the truth, then it must be the truth.
Yes.
Then I'm right.
Yes.
And
good point.
It just keeps on happening.
Yes. It's terrible. And that's not what any of us are here for, because the whole purpose of our path is to find our own personal spirituality and live our own personal spiritual gnosis. So just kind of bear that in mind when you're picking on people and you're trying to force that, that viewpoint that they got to do this or they got to do it that way. It's like the reed. John mentioned it earlier. We don't live the law of three just because we're witches. That's Wiccan. Yeah. We get asked that question a lot. What's the difference between Wicca and witchcraft? Well, one's a religion and one's not. Wicca's a religion. Witchcraft is a practice.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah. And there's so many practices out here that we were going to kind of tighten down on a little bit. And we're planning to have people on to talk with you that are from these traditions. So there's a lot of different traditions out here for you guys to choose from when you're asking the question, where do I start? There's witchcraft, traditional witchcraft. There's Wicca. There's islander religions, African religions. There's folk tradition and folk practice. And we have a beautiful one here, that's based on Christianity that we talk to a lot of Christians about when they come in the store, and that's Pennsylvania Dutch powwow. And where it came from in Germany, it was not Christian. So yeah, there's a lot there. There's ceremonialism and hermeticism, etc. Those traditions, like the Golden Dawn. Hit me with those. The Hermetic Society.
The OTO.
OTO, yeah. And then there's open versus closed practices.
Order of the Eastern Star, the Masonic Temple. Yes. Those are all, organizations, and they all have their own rituals, their own dogma, their own everything. And for a lot of people, that's what they need. They need that structure. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's great. Just the point being, once you're initiated into that, don't start scolding other people that are doing things in a different way.
Yes.
That's where you go wrong.
There are so many traditions.
If you've just been initiated into a lodge, awesome, great job. That's a great path, and you've got people around you, brothers and sisters around you to be there along the path, and somebody to bounce questions off, and someone to guide you, and you have books and you have guidelines, and all of it's well organized and documented. And a lot of people coming from the Abrahamic, they need that. Or just people in general, whether they came from it or not, need that structure, and that's great. Some of us don't like structure, and that's great too. The only bad thing is when you take something from someone, you don't credit it, or you change it and then claim it as original. That's the screw up. Okay, so if you like a part of a practice, that's fine, but do the practice, and do the practice the way culturally it should be, not just because you read it in a book with a shiny cover.
And don't cherry pick it.
Yeah,
don't cherry pick it because it doesn't feel right to you. If you're gonna practice the tradition, then before you set foot on the ground and take the oath and will yourself to dare to know to keep silent, a lot of them are asking you that, and it's for a good reason, the very reason that we're talking about. Because you not being silent and you going out and preaching the gospel of this new religion that you found pushes people away.
Oh, yeah.
It puts a gap in there, and people are not going to bridge that gap because they don't want to see themselves in that light. They don't want to be that irritating person that nobody wants to see coming. So when you're going to go in and practice these traditions, familiarize yourself first before you take your oath.
Yeah.
Because you should be true to that tradition when you're practicing it so that you understand it deeply. And there's a lot of things in there, in some of them that you're going to find sort of reprehensible at first. But if you give yourself time to understand the underlying reasons for why these rituals are performed and what you're actually trying to attune yourself to, they become quite beautiful, and it's absolutely positively logical because it's growth. Yeah, it looked dark and it looked oogity boogity and it scared you a little. Well, that's life. Life scares you a little. There are instances in traffic and instances with people in stores that have just gone absolutely insane for 5 seconds. Life is scary. The most beautiful things in nature are dangerous. And most of these mystery traditions realize this and want you to know how to face those instances down and how to use your will and your focus and your energy to alter a situation to your benefit. So think about that first. But if you're just looking at that tradition, you're going, oh my God, I can't practice this. This goes against everything I believe in. Don't take that oath just to be a looky-loo. You need to be completely committed.
And you can change your mind.
Yes.
So, I mean, as you grow and learn more, and, you know, like maybe you run into one of those instances Dave was saying where I just don't feel comfortable with this, then, you know, change your mind.
But don't badmouth it.
Yeah, but take what you've got from it, thank them for their time, and move on. You know, because ultimately this is a personal path.
Yes.
It is up to you. It's for you. It's no one else's. And if it happens to align with other people practicing similar ways, hey, you've got a friend. You've got somebody to talk to.
You got a friend.
Yeah, I knew that would trigger the song box. But, you know, and that's great. And that's one of the things we like about Picky Weeds is we have people that do just that. You know, they'll meet other people of other practices, and, you know, they do it slightly different. Maybe they devote themselves to one kind of practice or another, and maybe they devote themselves to, you know, a god or a goddess or gods or goddesses, and other people are on others. That's the beautiful thing about this, is that it's a highly personal path. It's up to you. And really it's on you to progress. You know, that's one of the things I've noticed. There's like 1,000 intro beginner to witchcraft books and things, but there's very little intermediate or advanced.
Yes, very little. Very, very little.
And they're there. You just have to know where to look. They're not going to say advanced witchcraft.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't work that way. You know, it's like I explained to someone at the store the other day, you know, they're like, didn't know anything about the books. I'm like, okay, so this room, think of this. This was the standard witchcraft room, beginner books, things like that. And I'm like, this is, you know, high school, college prep level. Okay. The other room on the one wall is collegiate. And then the ones at the top shelf, that's your postgrad, your grad school work.
Yeah.
So
that's a good way to put it.
You know, and ceremonial magic becomes a lifelong thing. And they all do, really. I mean, you can be devoted lifelong to just basic sympathetic magic and constantly be learning something new.
It's amazing.
That's the point. There's really not a beginning and an end. You kind of just have to jump on the moving treadmill and keep your big skepticism pole with you.
Yes. Develop a strong bullshit detector, we say it.
Because, you know, like anything else, in spirituality is rife with bullshit artists, rip-off artists.
Charlatans.
You know, you have to be able to discern that pretty quickly and purge that, right? So, I mean, we've had customers come in that one just came from New York City, and they had a reading done, and then this person charged them hundreds of dollars for the reading, and then said, well, for $500 more, I can get rid of the evil spirits that are around. Okay, this is bullshit.
Yes.
One, it's bullshit to charge hundreds of dollars for a divination.
Yeah.
Okay, that's bullshit. And then another, to do the bait and switch, or whatever you want to call technique they did, where, well, now you have to pay me more money to get this thing up. Okay, these are scams. Okay, so steer clear of that. A good reader is you're going to tell right away. You know, it doesn't take long for them. You know, are they trying to just cold read you, or are they actually divining? Right, and there's a lot of ways to read the cards. You have the traditional way where, you know, each card is assigned a meaning, whether it's, you know, positive or negative, what the alchemical symbols mean, what the astrological symbols mean, what the Kabbalistic feel or meaning of that card. And then you have other people that are intuitive readers, right? So they are using the imagery and trying to connect with you on an energy level, and it's very similar to a stream of consciousness almost. It's, you know, some people call it channelings. Basically, the first thing that comes to mind, you have an idea, and then you lay another card, and then that builds upon the idea. And sooner or later, you have a whole story laid out with you, or all the cards are in context with each other. That's another way of reading, right? And it's perfectly viable. Yes. But here we have two different approaches to get the same thing, and that's a result of a divination. But maybe the person that's trying to charge you $500 to get the evil spirit off of you is probably full of shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they should be more or less leaning into you if they can sense that, you know, that energy around you and teaching you how to develop a strong psychic self-defense rather than trying to bilk you for more money for doing spell work for you.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get into divination practices, a little bit deeper, in some later episodes, but just as an example, right? Probably the first thing you should learn how to do is to ground yourself, right? Yes. So how do I ground myself? Well, there's the simplest, easiest thing in the world is to go outside, take your shoes off, walk on the Mother Earth.
Yes.
Just let it all go,
Do a little earthing.
Yeah. So learn to just unblock, let everything out. You're connecting with the earth. You can feel the earth in your feet. You can feel the mud. You can feel the rocks, the grass, whatever you're at. Doesn't work so good in concrete, but
No.
You see me at the store all the time with no shoes. That's why.
Yes. Staying grounded.
Yeah. Am I on carpet and concrete? Yeah, but it's the best I can do right now.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of the easiest things in the world to do. Learn to meditate.
Yes. And there are myriad ways to go about that.
And there's books on it. There's classes on it. There's Mary Ellen every Wednesday has a meditation. There's YouTubes on it. Are they all good?
You got to find the practice that suits you there. Because you've got to be able to understand that you don't always have to sit cross-legged and be uncomfortable to meditate. You can meditate, sitting under a tree. You can meditate sitting in your living room, reclined in your chair. It's just about getting to that space where you're calm, you're out of your head, you don't have a whole lot of errant thoughts running around in there. You're kind of welcoming the silence and welcoming that calming nature into your body and letting go of all that negative, toxic buildup of energy that everybody incurs during the week with work and the general public. The general public stresses you out, and everywhere you're going, your molecules are bumping into their molecules, and you're picking that stuff up and bringing it home with you energetically, and you're worn out. And so you got to learn how to get rid of that, and that's part of meditation. And you just got to learn how to slow down, how to listen and observe the things around you. One of the things I do when I'm trying to go astral is I recreate a situation in my mind and I hear it, and I try to hear the sounds around me and smell the aromas around me, like the dirt or the smell of the trees or the flowers. I try to hear the car and hear the door shutting and hear the wind and hear the trees moving. And I have a dog pushing my chair around, so if you hear a lot of that's not me. I'm not that excited. Okay. But I'll recreate the whole scene. Like if it's walking, I try to hear my feet crunching on the rocks or on the ground in the grass and hear the limbs snapping and hear the leaves moving around me. So you want to learn how to do that and observe, when you're in nature and you're sitting still. What do I hear? Stop yourself. If you want to meditate and you want to get out of your head and it just won't shut up and you keep having these little thoughts about, did I do the laundry? Did I leave that damn piece of paper in my pants and wash them? Then when you get to that thought, stop and go, what do I smell? What do I hear? What can I see directly in front of me? Look at the dirt. Try to spot the little animals crawling around in it, the little insects, things like that. And before you know it, you're out of your head. You're meditating, dude. You're meditating. Mm-hmm. And yoga can help. And we have a lot of practitioners that practice yoga. We have Mary Ellen. She's been a yogi for decades. And we have Kaylin, who comes around and does the sound class, and she's a yogi. So yoga can help. And there's plenty of yoga for beginners. You don't have to stand on your head, folks. It's not all that. It's not all wrapping your legs behind your head or looking as if you're levitating. It's not. There's yoga for beginners, and there's good relaxation yoga, and there's good yoga for PTSD, and there's yoga for people who are injured. There's a myriad of types of yoga you can practice. So come out and talk to these ladies and gentlemen and find out what best suits you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yogic breathing actually is one of the foundations of ceremonial practice. Yoga is really a really, really good place to start.
It is.
especially the meditative aspect of it.
Yoga for Magic by Crowley, right?
Yeah. That's an okay book.
It's very intense, though. You're holding your position for an hour or so. But yeah.
So anyway, I guess to kind of take this full circle, the question of where do I start, what do I do, decide what interests you.
Yes.
Right? What is the thing that piques your interest? Why? What made you want to seek out information about it?
Why do I keep watching that movie over and over and over again?
Was it ancestry? Was it a particular practice? Was it anything? What is it that turned your head and made you curious? And that's a good place to start.
Yeah, look back to those conversations you had with your grandma and your grandpa and why you were so enchanted. A lot of lead-ins are there too. And ancestors that have passed are probably speaking to you in your dreams. So, yeah.
But again, it's a personal thing. So why not? What better way to start than what interests you personally? What turns your head? What makes you want to read more about it? And that's a good place.
Yes, it is.
Just keep your bullshit detector turned on.
Yes.
Because you having read one source and it's an accredited source, and then you read another book that maybe it's an author you've not heard of or never read before, and they say some contradictory stuff. Well, there you go. Now you have some place to look.
Yes.
and say, okay, who is right here?
Yeah, look at the bibliographies in those books too.
And it may sound like it's just schoolwork, but it's important, right? You want to lay the good foundation. You want a rock solid foundation. And that's the best thing. I mean, I can recommend if you are interested in Wicca, pretty much anything by Scott Cunningham is going to be a good starting point. The Witch's Bible by the Farrars, Janet and Stuart Farrar, is excellent book. And even within the umbrella of Wicca, there's multiple practices and sects, right? So you have Dianic, you have Alexandrian, you have Gardnerian.
It goes on.
Who knows how many now, right? Different covens, different groups have different sets of dogmas, different practices. And it may be to accomplish the same thing, but it may be different, right? So educating yourself on that, even if you don't follow it or practice it, is a good thing. It can't hurt, right? So, if you're interested in Irish culture, pagan mythos, Morgan Daimler, I cannot recommend her enough.
Absolutely excellent.
Irish Pagan School, folk magic. You want some folk magic? Read The Golden Bough.
Yes,
Sir
oh my God.
James George Fraser.
Or The Power of Myth.
Yep,
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell.
Anything by Joseph Campbell.
Ceremonial, L'Homme Mile du Cat, pretty much a no-brainer. Everything the man wrote is a pretty good place to start. And we have a local author, Mark Stavish. I would definitely check his books out too. Excellent. Really well done.
He's the director of the Hermetic Institute in Scranton, and he's been a professor for some time, and he's really prolific, really, really amazing wealth of knowledge coming out of that guy.
Yeah, but bottom line is you want to read from accredited authors first, and then go from there, right? So you get a good baseline, and build on it.
Bella's being very loud, you guys.
Yeah.
I've kind of got my hand around her mouth like, chill out, dude. We're trying to talk. But for the gods, there are myriad books out there on the tales of the gods and things like that for Greek. One of my favorites for Welsh gods is the Mabinogion. One of my favorite Irish books ever was about the cattle raid of Cooley. It's called the Twin Bocunia. My favorite translation of it I can't seem to find lately. It was by Kinsella, but there are some. I've read the one that we're carrying now, and it's really good too. So that, for all of you guys out there who are really interested in the Morgan, is probably my favorite tale of the Morgan, the Twin Bocunia. It's spelled T-A-I-N, the Twain. Yeah. It's amazing. And then there's the Eddas, the poetic Eddas for the Norse. And then there's the Mahabharata for if you're going the way of India. Then there you get into things like the tales from Japan and from China, and I like to read a lot of the Stoicism out of China, like The Art of War by Sun Tzu, the I Ching, which is the Book of Changes, things like that. There's some amazing stuff out there. Look to those, those pieces that are classics, and go with the classics. And then we carry a line of Penguin Classics books too, that are those books in a retailing, in a paperback copy, that are a little bit more accessible, monetarily speaking. So they're still the same books, but they're just now in paperback.
Yeah, a little more affordable.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the other question we get all the time is, do I have to have a god or a goddess, or gods, goddesses, or practice, right? So to the short answer is no, you don't have to. You can practice the craft without deity if you so desire. Again, it's your practice.
Local spirits are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, work with the things local to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the big takeaway here is that it is your personal practice. You're going to do the way that things feel right to you. The caveat there is, am I doing bullshit? Right? So if you think you have fairy blood, you're probably full of shit.
Yeah.
Because that's
you might
not
be deluding yourself.
And here's why. Because there were fae that mixed with humans in some of the mythologies and all of that. But how would you go about proving it?
Yeah.
Is there a DNA test for fae blood? Right.
Yeah.
Not trying to insult, just trying to be logical here. Is that something that you can document? No.
Yeah.
So maybe way back in 3 millennia ago.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
But can you prove it? No. Okay. So better to just keep things a little bit more grounded. This is why you ground. This is why you keep your feet on the ground, so that you don't loft into woo land. And
Yeah.
woo land is dangerous. Woo land gets you believing a lot of things that commercial authors are just writing to make a buck. They've not done research. They've not done the work. They're just writing a book, cranking it out, and making a buck.
And can I say just this? I want you to listen to this takeaway if you listen to nothing else today. There are some practices that you really should not perform alone. You should have a second. You should have someone there when you're channeling, because you may not come back.
Yeah.
You may wake up in a mental institution. You may wake up dead. There are some practices in yoga you should not do alone, because your heart can stop and you'll just be gone. So, a pound of caution prevention here. Think about what you're doing. Read the incidences of, loss of life or mental illness on some of these things, and think to myself, I need a buddy. I need a partner. I realize that a lot of people are solitary, but you know how many people I've seen just in 4 years that have done real damage to themselves by practicing these things on their own, locked in their room. Don't do it. Get a second. Make a friend. Make a buddy. If you don't have one, come to us.
Yeah, and that's why you shouldn't start at the end.
Yeah.
Right? So things are set up the way they are, especially if you go to an established coven or established lodge. They're going to have the method by which you learn is going to be regimented, right? So the first things you're going to learn is how to ground and center, how to banish, how to do the basics, ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. People get excited and they want to skip to the end and they want to start doing advanced stuff without having the beginner prep. Look, this is real. Okay. This is not Fantasyland or Sabrina, right? This is legitimate practice. And if you skip ahead and you don't do the work, you can find yourself in trouble.
Yes, you can. And that's why yogic teachers are so, and it seems fanatical, but it's not. They love you. They're worried about you, about you not slipping out into the astral, because you can actually sever the cord with reality. You hear it touted as a silver cord, right? A silver cord that extends from the navel up into the astral. The whole reason for the tether is to be able to bring yourself back when you're journey is over. And so if you get to a certain point where you've slowed and regulated your breathing and your heart rate to where it's barely there, believe me, there are studies where it has stopped and somebody has died from it. There's a good reason for their fanaticism with that. It's not fanaticism, it's love. Have a teacher, have a partner, have a buddy, have somebody that can look at your body and see that you're going way too pale and bring you back.
And that's why discipline's so important too. And people get upset about discipline sometimes. You know, you may go to a circle where the leader of that circle is very regimented in how she or he is performing it. And then when people start chit-chatting or cutting up or basically disrespecting the circle, they're asked to leave, you know. And this is the level of discipline that it takes, especially in works like that. So develop that early. Understand that you're in someplace sacred. This isn't, you don't step out of the circle to go chase your kids when they're misbehaving, or you have that arranged ahead of time, right? Don't be distracted. Don't let these things happen, because discipline goes hand in hand with everything that we do. And I think that's why, you know, the ceremonial practice, you know, even if just having that attitude towards everything where this person speaks and then that person speaks and then we do action A and then we do action B and we do it this way and it's formulaic. There's a reason for that. They work.
Yes.
And when you break that cycle to yell at something or someone, or you start chit-chatting about, you know, whatever, you're breaking the cycle. So this is why some circle leaders are strict, and they should be.
Yes.
This is a sacred act. You know, whether you have a pantheon or not, the very act of magic is sacred. The very act of divination is sacred. The very act of meditation is sacred. And so you should approach it with that kind of solemnity. And people that don't, people that are just there for the aesthetic, probably shouldn't be there. And if they stomp away mad, so be it.
Yeah,
it's
you haven't lost much.
You're not in the right place yet.
Yeah.
Will you? Yeah, but it's up to you.
Yeah.
Again, personal path. But along with that personal path, it's not do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. You need to have some discipline in your thoughts and discipline in your actions and discipline in everything. Otherwise, it's just going to become a convoluted mess. So don't be afraid to step on the path. You should. There's lots of places to learn. Keep a hefty dose of skepticism. But have the respect for the work that others have done or doing, and the work that you're doing. It deserves respect.
It does indeed. And there's nothing wrong with being invited to a circle, but please, for all that is holy, if you're invited and you're just doing a preview, maintain that solemnity. I promise you, 99.9% of us, after the solemn ritual is over, we're going to party like fiends, okay? Mm-hmm. We're going to eat, we're going to drink, we're going to laugh, we're going to have a good time. We're going to talk to our scribe and see what they saw in the ritual. We're going to find out what happened, that we were so immersed in the actual summoning that we weren't aware of. Yet, all of that's going to happen. So bide your time. Be respectful. Enjoy these events. Most of the time, we have a great freaking time. But some of us have actually been preparing for weeks. We've been fasting. We've been writing. We've been summoning daily on the daily before we come there to do the final summon. So a lot of work and love goes into this, guys. Have a little respect. And respect yourselves enough, you know, to be there and be present.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think that's about it for today. We're coming up close on the hour marker, and if we've kept your attention this long, congratulations.
Woohoo!
You stuck it out to the end.
And I'm doing this on my birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Tay. She's 25 today.
He's so lovely. I want to thank all of you that wrote me today. It really made me feel good. You guys are amazing. I love you so much, and we wouldn't be here without you. So thank you for listening. And I hope that you will subscribe. So like and subscribe to the show and tell your friends. And we love you bunches. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. So we hope you enjoyed this episode of In the Weeds, and we hope you didn't have to pick too much pucker brush off your cloak after visiting with us here. If you liked the episode, please follow, subscribe, and share. And if you're really kind, leave a positive review. Be sure to tune in next week as we publish a new episode weekly. If you're in the area, stop by the store and see us. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.